Okay, so what if I told you that one of the most effective, modern ways to fight poverty wasn't laid out in some boring government report, but in an ancient divine story? It sounds wild, right? Well, today we're going to dive into a totally fascinating piece of communication that does exactly that. It transforms a complex strategy for helping the poor into something like a sacred quest.
So our story really kicks off with this incredibly powerful question. Imagine millions of families asking a wise sage, how can we be saved? How can we just get a chance to earn a living and have a good life? I mean, it's just this raw, desperate plea that you can hear echoing through countless villages. And it totally sets the stage for what comes next, a divine answer to a very, very human problem, that crushing weight of poverty.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at that divine question about poverty. Then, we'll get to the goddess's really surprising modern solution. After that, we'll check out her blueprint for making it happen. Then comes the really cool part, the miraculous transformations that actually happened. And finally, we'll wrap up with what this whole ancient story can teach us right now. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Our story kicks off with a hero, the great sage Narada. And this is a guy who just couldn't turn a blind eye to the suffering he saw all around him. And believe me, his journey is what got this whole incredible process started.
So you gotta picture Narada traveling through these villages. He's not just some casual observer passing through, no. He's really seeing the people. He's deeply moved, pained even, by the daily struggles he witnesses. We're not talking about poverty as some abstract concept here. For him, it's the real, human cost he sees on every face. And that's what lights a fire in him, you know? He becomes absolutely determined to find a real, lasting solution.
Narada kind of realizes that all the earthly solutions just aren't cutting it. So he decides he's got to take his quest to a whole new level. Literally. He travels to the divine realm to go straight to the top, to appeal directly to the goddess of wealth and prosperity herself, Lakshmi. In his mind, only a divine answer has the power to finally break this devastating cycle. And this is his plea. But listen closely, because it's not what you'd expect. He isn't asking for a miracle, for gold to just rain from the sky. The key phrase here is, with just a little effort. Think about that. He's not asking for a handout. He's asking for a method, a practical, sustainable way for people to lift themselves up. It's such an insightful question, packed with urgency, but also a ton of hope. All right, so this brings us to the absolute turning point in the story. The goddess Lakshmi hears Narada's plea, and she gives him an answer.
So what do you think it was? A magic spell? Some kind of hidden treasure map? The actual answer is, well, it's way more surprising and honestly, a lot more revolutionary than any of that.
The divine secret to ending poverty is a self-help group. Yep, you heard that right. A self-help group. An ancient goddess basically lays out the plan for a modern, superstructured, community-based financial tool. And this is the moment where this epic, celestial story gets totally grounded in a practical, real-world plan. It's just this perfect mix of ancient myth and modern methods. And Lakshmi doesn't just, toss out a vague idea and say, good luck. No way. She gives Narada a super detailed, step-by-step blueprint for how to make it work. It's basically the divine instruction manual for getting rid of poverty. So first, she breaks down the why, the core philosophy. She says the fundamental problem really comes down to one thing: isolation. When people are working alone, they're vulnerable, they're weak, and they're easily taken advantage of. But, and this is the big but, if they unite, if they form a group, they can pool those small resources together and build real collective strength. They can protect themselves. It's such a simple but incredibly powerful idea, and it's right at the heart of her whole plan.
And then she gets super practical, laying out the rules for success. Okay, rule 1, form a group, about 10 to 20 people from similar backgrounds. 2, meet every single week, no excuses. 3, everybody saves a little bit regularly, and the group lends that money to its own members. 4, open a bank account to make it all official. 5, share the leadership. It has to be transparent, everyone gets a say. And finally, number 6, and this is maybe the most important, obey the group's rules, the ones they made together. It's not just a plan, it's really a social contract.
Okay, so a divine blueprint sounds great in theory, but the big question is, did it actually work down here in the real world? Well, let's dive into the miraculous transformations that happened when people actually put the goddess's advice into practice. Let's start with our first case study, a village called Majini. And listen, this place wasn't just poor. It was a community completely defined by crime and fear. We're talking illegal logging, illegal brewing. That was the economy. It was so dangerous that, get this, even the project workers were too scared to go in there for over a year.
But then, look at the transformation. It is just staggering. After the villagers adopted this self-help group model, everything changed. The crime and fear, replaced by safety and community. The illegal logging, gone. Instead, they were growing lush crops of wheat, potatoes, onions. That barren land, it's now irrigated with wells and sprinklers. They even got paved roads and electricity. The change was so profound that young men from the village, who nobody wanted their daughters to marry before, were now seen as great catches. It's a total 180.
And this quote from one of the villagers, it just says everything. Group work gave our village salvation from poverty. They don't call it improvement or a better economy. They call it salvation. That's how deep the change felt. It's just proof positive that the goddess's plan had real life-altering power. And of course, an idea this powerful couldn't stay in one place. It started to spread. In other villages, like Lakshmanpura, it was the women who really grabbed onto this idea and ran with it. They heard about the success stories, and they didn't just sit around and wait for someone to come help them. No, they went out and actively sought out the information, totally determined to bring that same change to their own communities. And just look at what they accomplished. We're talking about 110 women in just one village. By pooling their money and their labor, they built over 25 irrigation wells. Now, this wasn't some small weekend project. This was a massive infrastructure undertaking. It completely changed their ability to farm. And their success created this amazing ripple effect, inspiring a whole wave of well building all across the region.
Okay, our last case study is a village called Suta, and they were caught in a totally different kind of trap, debt. Almost every single family was trapped in a cycle of debt to ruthless moneylenders. To even survive, they had to leave their homes every year, migrating to find work for pennies. It was a hopeless situation.
But here's how they climbed out of it. It was a step-by-step journey. First, they saw what was happening in other villages and they asked for help. Then, they did something brilliant. They created a resource map of their own village and realized the solution was literally right under their feet: water. So with a little help, they built a percolation tank and 8 stop dams. The water levels rose, and suddenly they could grow 2 or 3 crops a year. That was the game changer. The migration stopped, they paid back the moneylenders, and they didn't just get by, they started to thrive, even buying their own tractors.
So, when you step back and look at all this, what's the ultimate lesson we can learn from this incredible mix of ancient story and modern development?
Well, the moral of the story is actually pretty clear. First, working together empowers people who feel isolated. Second, financial discipline, even just saving tiny amounts, is the first real step towards freedom. And third, local problems often have local solutions. But maybe, just maybe, the biggest lesson of all is about how we communicate. By taking a modern, kind of complicated idea like a self-help group and wrapping it in a familiar, trusted, ancient story, the message became easy to understand, impossible to forget, and incredibly motivating. And this last quote from the sage, wow, it just perfectly captures what's really at stake here. Death kills a person once, but poverty kills a person slowly, every day, every moment. And such a powerful reminder that poverty isn't just about not having money, it's this slow grinding down of the human spirit. And that means the solutions have to be about more than just money too. They have to restore dignity and hope. So that leaves us with one final big question to think about. When we look at all the huge, complex challenges we face today, stuff like climate change or public health, what could we solve if we got a little more creative? What if we could make these problems feel more urgent and the solutions more achievable by framing them in the timeless, powerful language of our oldest stories?